Hi, my name is Alex Brewer. I'm an action figure sculptor for Mondo, and your childhood was trash if you didn't watch X-Men the Animated Series.
So let's spin it around and try and tell me about your first memory of X-Men the Animated Series.
Yeah, so yeah, it's hard to think exactly what my first memory was. I remember, like, I think my first exposure to the X-Men was was being at like a bowling alley, probably for some friend's birthday party, and the arcade game,
Oh
the
yeah,
X-Men arcade game, and seeing the side of the arcade cabinet, and like that was the first time I remember seeing like Cyclops and Wolverine and Storm.
yeah,
And I remember like Cyclops specifically because, like, I really liked his visor. Like, the visor looked
yeah,
really cool to me.
yeah.
And I was, must have been incredibly, because this is before the cartoon. So this is early 90s. So I'm like, 3 or 4 years old, five, maybe.
Jeez. Yeah,
And, and the, and I was like, it was strange because I was like, as a kid, I can remember being like, I want to get into superheroes. I want to figure out what this like what's my superhero gonna be like, because I was into, like, I grew up at that point on Ghostbusters, real Ghostbusters, and Ninja Turtles, and
oh
those
yeah,
are like superhero adjacent things, right?
yeah.
Like, you
True.
don't really. But I was like, man, like, do I get into like Superman, like Batman, like, I don't know, like. And then I saw Cyclops, and I was like, that guy looks cool. Maybe that could be my
I want
superhero.
laser beam eyes.
Exactly, yeah. And
Yeah,
then when I saw the cartoon on Fox, it was like, oh, it's that guy with the visor with you can see his hair now, but like it's the visor guy, it's Cyclops.
Same
So
guy.
I remember that, like, kind of being like my, like, at the I zeroed in on X-Men from that, right? And it was just it I remember it like checking all the boxes, all the like superhero boxes for me. Like, I was like, sort of briefly like thinking about Fantastic Four, because I liked the concept of like a team of
yeah,
superheroes where everyone has like their
yeah,
powers and they like work together and their own thing. And but the Fantastic Four, for whatever reason, that there was no cartoon yet, and it was just hard. It was hard to get into, right? But
yeah.
seeing the X-Men animated series on Fox, Saturday morning cartoon, I remember, like, very specifically, like that first episode where you're introduced to the X-Men, like, at the mall, like the
Yes, yeah,
Sentinels. The Sentinel
Yeah.
has tracked Jubilee to the mall, where she's playing an arcade machine. It so
yeah.
happens, bringing it
Oh,
full
weird.
circle.
Wonder what game she's playing.
And I
Software support.
remember, that it introduces like Rogue and Storm and Gambit, and they're sort of shopping at the mall, and then shit goes down with the Sentinel, and like, Storm changes into her costume and she's got
Yeah,
powers, and Rogue's got powers, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, they're just like regular people, like, hanging out, going about their day, but they're secretly superheroes. Like, it's like that Clark Kent
yeah,
Superman thing where it's like, oh, they're walking among us, but they have secret powers and secret
yeah.
costumes and secret code names and stuff. And so that was like, I remember that, like, being the sort of the thing that clicked with me as a kid, like that,
It's a
they were like
girl first.
relatable, right?
Yeah, they're just like you and me,
Yeah.
except I can
Except
accept.
superheroes,
Yeah.
mutants.
Well, and that's, I think that is also the, like, the unique thing about like the mutant abilities, that it's like it can be anyone. Like, you don't
Yeah,
have to be bitten by a radioactive spider or be from like Krypton, or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Super
Bruce
rich.
Wayne.
Anything or anything too, right? Anyone or anything. Like, the mutant powers are so vast, and I think that's one of the
Yeah.
things that like brought me into the whole X-Men thing. And I never got into like Captain America or the
Right.
Avengers, not
Yeah.
even the Justice League. I mean, a little older, I started like really getting into Green Lantern, but other than that, it was, for me, X-Men.
Yeah.
And because X-Men is such a broad term, right? It's not like, here's these is 8 whatever characters that Jim Lee put together from the that are in the cartoon, it was no, there's like hundreds and hundreds of mutants, and it was always exciting seeing like new mutants coming on the screen and what they look like or what their powers are, and just the world that they built and the story that they told in that animated series.
Yeah.
It was so like in depth and vast.
Yeah, it's a fully realized world, and I think that it really did a good job of taking the 15 plus years of stories that Chris Claremont was writing in the comics and
Yeah,
kind of distilling it down to its like purest form, right? It's like they were able to take just sort of like the best ideas that he had built out over the 70s and 80s,
yeah,
and they were like, okay, well, like let's build our world. Like over here is Genosha, and
yeah,
over here
everything.
is
What can we
yeah.
sell?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure the Toy Biz had a hand in that when
I
they're
mean,
like, look at the toy license.
Well, it's cool
I'm
too. Like I didn't realize as a kid like how many of the episodes were also like it was they were obviously doing like some of the classic storylines like Dark Phoenix and all that.
yeah.
But they were also pulling from stuff that was on the comic book stands at the time. Stuff like the
Oh, really?
yeah, like the Avalon episode, where Magneto has created Magneto and his acolytes have created this space station where he's like, mutants, we're
Yeah,
leaving Earth. This that's the only we can't get
This
along with the
place, we're out of
humans
here.
anymore. Like we gotta get out of here.
yeah.
And that was happening in the comics at the concurrently, I believe. So, and
That's
Age of
one of my
Apocalypse too. Yeah.
that's one of my favorite like costume designs is his acolytes. I don't know
Yeah,
why,
it's
like the
cool.
purple and like the maroon red and stuff like
The
that. It made no
gold shoulder
sense.
pads.
Yeah, and I mean, even like at one point in the comics, like Colossus is evil and he's one of the acolytes,
Mm,
and Colossus is one of my favorite mutants.
yeah.
Um, after Cable's always number one, then it's like Colossus and Nightcrawler always like share number two for me. And then randomly, and it's I found him through a comic, and I forget which one. And Toy Biz actually made a figure of him, but it was Sinyaka, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
one
With the
one
wrap,
of
the bandages and the
yeah,
whips.
and the psionic whips and stuff. Like I always want to see more of him, and
He
I
ends
think
up
we
getting
get him.
like crushed into a ball, right? Like something he gets. I can't remember even who, if it was like Exodus or somebody. Like Senyaka
Yeah,
meets like a pretty grisly end in the comics.
yeah. Jeez, it's funny that you mentioned though the like the pilot of the show,
Mm,
because I can't tell you which episode I saw first, but I think that's the episode I saw the most,
yeah.
because I think it was called like Night of the Sentinels or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it
But
was
like
like a
that's like
multi-part
yeah, it
introduction.
was like 2 episodes or whatever, and that was always ingrained in my head as a kid. And like even like as an adult, I can replay most of it. Like the second you said like the mall scene, it's like yeah, and Jubilee running into Gambit and thinking he's like a bad guy because he
Yeah.
kind of looks like a bad guy,
Right.
you know. Um,
Because
but
didn't she not like tell it? Wasn't that when before she realized that there was like a whole bunch of them out there, and she was
Yeah. It's
like
her.
just a
It's
random teenager who accidentally did a couple things a few times, and then she was like, ah,
Yeah, you see her
yeah,
use her like firework powers, and it's like the first like she's blown up the VCR, right, and the
right,
arcade
oh
machine, but
yeah,
that
yeah,
was like the first time that she's like kind of coming to the realization that she's a mutant. No one even really knows exactly what mutants are.
right.
It's a great like we are introduced to the world of the X-Men through her eyes, right? Like she meets all the characters,
yeah,
and there is a sort of like she ends up getting like gassed by one of the sentinels, so she passes out and she comes to in like the mission room of the underneath the mansion, but like she doesn't know if she's like been kidnapped by bad guys or what, and
Yeah, she
yeah,
she's
has
like
no clue what's
moving
going
through, she like
on.
sneaks out of the like infirmary and she's moving through the like this like kind of futuristic place, and she sees like Beast like walking on the ceiling and like more
yeah, right.
and she's just like, what is going on? Like I gotta get out of here. And we as the audience are similarly too like, what is this? Who are like the mystery of it?
It was such a yeah, it was such a neat way to like hook you right off the bat, because I didn't read a whole ton of X-Men comics at that point,
Yeah.
but I fell in love with the cartoon, and it then I all of a sudden I was like at Walmart's and I was like buying Executioner song for some reason,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But entirely because of the cartoon. But I always like going back, and like you don't realize it at the time if you're not really into, if you weren't reading the comics. Picking Jubilee as like a main character was like going
Yeah.
back was a risk,
Yeah.
but I think it paid off well, and like I've thought about it like number of times over the years, and the only thing I can come to is they picked her because essentially she's also like the most relatable,
Yeah.
most humany, if you will,
Yeah.
and like a teenager.
Yeah.
Like
She's a kid. She's getting her mutant powers for the first time. So again, it's like we're being introduced to this world through her. And that's kind of like the common tactic that the X-Men, like the first issue of X-Men, it's Jean Grey coming to the school for the first time and learning
Yeah.
about, mutants and her abilities. And then Kitty Pryde, they kind of have a reset with Kitty Pryde coming to the X-Men. And then Jubilee is sort of like the 90s version
Yeah.
of Kitty Pryde. And it's actually kind of cool because, like, have you guys seen the Pride of the X-Men?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was like the original pitch for the show. Like they made that as like a proof of concept pilot to
So it was
pitch to the
supposed to be like a
networks.
one-off.
Yeah, it was basically to
Okay.
show to the networks like, let's make X-Men. Like it was this network executive, Margaret Lesh, who like she like really believed in the X-Men. She loved the concept, and so they put together like a bit of money, made this pilot that was animated in Japan. I think it was actually like Toei animation studio. Like so, it's a beautifully animated pilot.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
And it's cool too because it's like all pre Jim Lee design. So like I don't know if like X-Men #1 hadn't come out yet. I don't think it had. So it's like it's all the sort of more classic designs of the characters. And they originally pitched that to the network. It didn't get picked up, and I think it was only after X-Men #1 was like the highest
Broke
selling
every
comic
record,
of all time. And it's like then they're like, okay, let's give X-Men another shot, but
They-
it has to
they
look like this
retooled.
comic. It has to be like the Jim Lee
Yeah, that makes
designs and
sense.
stuff. But that comparing the two like pilot episodes, the Pride of the X-Men one is interesting to see because it's so much exposition up front. It's like
Yeah.
Kitty Pryde like shows up at the mansion, and they do a little bit of mystery where it's like the door opens on its own and she's hearing Xavier's voice in her head and everything.
Yeah.
But like
Telling where to go.
but then he just unloads all this like this is Aurora Monroe, also called Storm, and she commands the elements. This is Scott Summers, also called Cyclops, and you're just like, okay, here are all these, this is Magneto. This is why we fight him. It's like too much, right? Like whereas
Yeah.
the X-Men.
Listen, you're a teenager. We need you to save the world with us. Just hop on board.
Yeah, well, then by the time they get to Night of the Sentinels with Jubilee, it's like you're just thrown into it, and it's like chaos, and like she ends up in the danger room, and like Wolverine's fighting Gambit, and you're like, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, what the hell is going on? It's like a really like exciting way to like kind of kick things off. And then you have like Storm is like, okay, let me just explain what's going on. You get one scene, but it's like it's very smart. I think it's like a real like improvement of like how to engage the viewer without like just hitting them with so much exposition right off the bat.
And the important part is no Australian Wolverine.
Yeah, right. I know.
Which I mean, as a kid, I didn't know. I didn't care. I loved Pride of the X-Men was amazing. I think I found it as like a VHS tape in like some janky department store up here. Yeah. And I watched that thing to no avail. Like that thing probably got worn out pretty fast.
Yeah. It's funny. As a kid, I was like similarly, like you see it in the video store VHS, and I was like, what is this like old X-Men? this isn't
Yeah.
this is like, brown costume Wolverine, and like,
Yeah, right.
that's this is old stuff, right? Like, and then, watching it as an adult, and it's like beautifully animated, like those
Oh
designs
yeah.
are so
Yeah, oh yeah,
classic.
it's
It's like, oh
gorgeous.
man, I
Yeah,
wasted time not watching this as a kid. But,
I
yeah. I mean,
actually, you
I
go.
like that brown suit Wolverine back then only because like I had the action figure, and I think I might have had the action figure first
ah,
because it was a cool toy.
yeah,
With the removable mask and the pop
yeah,
out
yeah.
claws and stuff. That was just so cool. So I think
It
like I gravitated to that.
Well, it's so stupid, right? Because like that those figures probably came out a year before I was like thinking about X-Men so like even just the fact that it was like
Yeah.
a year prior to my exposure to it, I was like, that's like grandpa toys. Like it was like
Yeah.
just
I
literally
mean, when
just
you're
a
young,
year
when you're a
before my
kid, yeah,
time.
absolutely, absolutely. When you're a kid, like a couple years apart, and you're like, no, that's I don't want to touch that. It's for
Yeah.
babies, or that's for old folks, or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't
It's,
realize how like those figures are great figures, and
oh
then
yeah.
um, even and they started off with the X Factor Cyclops. That was the first one they put out with the
Mm,
white cross and stuff.
right.
But I mean, his optic blast lit up, like his optics lit up, like that's so cool.
Yeah, action features so great.
Yeah,
Storm with
plus
the little like lightning
the
bolt
lightning bolt.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were still articulated too. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just amazing. Like the ingenuity that they crammed into those things back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
even
like the
nowadays too. But
Nightcrawler with the giant like suction cup
the
knee on
suction
his
cups.
knee, and it's I do remember like knowing, so I was seeing like Cyclops on the arcade machine, and then seeing that Nightcrawler figure, and kind of knowing that he was related to the X Men, but by the time the Fox cartoon show aired, like I was like, well, Nightcrawler's not here, so he must be like an old character.
Right, right.
I mean, he
I,
shows up eventually.
Yeah,
his
no,
episode
right.
was good. His episode was good. It was a
Yeah,
couple. It was an arc,
Yeah,
but
it
his
was
was
like a
really good.
handful.
And then
yeah,
they even touched base on like him and like Mystique being his mom and Rogue being
yeah,
like his sister
yeah,
and stuff. Like they went deep with that show.
yeah. No, they were super faithful to the comics, and I think they were working by the later seasons, they were kind of working with Marvel Comics, and being privy to like, well, these are the story arcs that we're gonna do in the comics this
Yeah,
year, and they could kind of pick and choose. And I think Marvel would like give their suggestions of like, oh, you should do this storyline, you should do this storyline, and
um,
cool to see
yeah,
it though, kind of like the abridged versions of some of these like long running things
yeah,
distilled into the episodes, like like a Rogue's Tale, where they take
yeah,
all that complicated history of Rogue being raised by Mystique and being with the Brotherhood of Mutants initially, and absorbing Ms. Marvel's powers, like
yeah. And they show that, right? There's an episode where they actually like
yeah, no, and
tell that.
even though
That's so
that's like
cool.
over multiple comics of like slowly building out her backstory, or it's like obviously that's how she's introduced,
Yeah,
but they did it all in one episode where it's like she's having this like she's being possessed by Carol Danvers, and all her like old memories are coming back. It was
yeah,
cool. Like it's a great
yeah,
like the X-Men the animated series is a great like introductory course to like the X-Men comics, because
It's
it's
crash
just like,
course.
yeah, crash course, exactly.
yeah,
um
That's that was that's how I viewed it. Like every time I think about it, I remember back and kind of see clips here and there. That's exactly how I'm like, man, you really sucked me in here, buddy.
right.
Like,
Yeah, and that's the same way with me. Like I think it was probably the toys first. The toys of the arcade cabinet because that thing is iconic.
yeah,
Then the cart, the prior to the X-Men, the X-Men the animated series, and then it made me want to get into comics because the show was so good, like you say,
yeah,
and all the episodes and the things that they covered, it made me want more.
yeah,
And then you find out like, oh hey, there's a lot more in these comics that I can digest and fill out the gaps or just expand on them. So kind of went backwards with that, where it was like you know, most people, I'm sure, not most people, but I'm sure a lot of people got into it through the comics because the comics are far older. But for me, it was definitely the other way around, being, you know,
Yes,
a late 90s baby.
same, yeah, same here. I mean, I don't know if you had, I don't know what your experience was, but I can remember, when the shows, I was like, well, I want to read the comics. I want to like,
Right.
and so I
Yeah.
remember going into a comic book store and I was like, I want, like, I'm here. One of your X-Men comics, please, good sir. And the guy working there was like, well, which title? We've got Uncanny X-Men, we've got X-Men, we've got X-Force, X Factor, Generation X, we've got
Oh
Age of Apocalypse X. Like, what do you? And I was like, well, just like the cartoon. Like, is there a comic that has like the whole team, like the characters that I see on the show? And they're like,
Oh
well,
yeah.
yeah.
this one's got Beast and Gambit and Storm, and then this one's got Cyclops. And it was like, because like the X books, the comic books at the time were kind of like all over the place, right? And it was all like
Yeah.
they were trying to get you to have to buy as many comics as you could to like Executioner Song. It's like you have to buy Cable, you've got to buy Wolverine. Like there's just,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
and so when you're a kid trying to like get it and you just want an issue of X-Men, I remember it being like really hard to break in. And I think there was like they had the like X-Men Adventures eventually, that was like literally the episodes from the cartoon done
Oh,
in
okay.
comic form. And so that
Nice.
was maybe like, but even then it was like, well, but this is just the episode from the show. Like I didn't really start reading until like Onslaught. I don't know
Oh,
what
yeah.
I don't know when you jumped in, Mike, but Onslaught was like, because that was like kind of the whole crew was back together. I remember there's that like one issue with the Joe Madureira cover that was like the whole team on the front. I was like, okay, start here.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it was definitely around there because that was big in my childhood comic reading. The Phalanx Saga was
Mm.
also in there. Again, the same bullshit issue where it's like, all right, well now I got to track down 8 different like publications to complete the story and
and
stuff.
and
Which,
even then, like the X-Men aren't even like in that. It's like
yeah,
Banshee, White Queen,
yeah,
Jubilee, and Sabretooth. Those are the X-Men because everyone else is like out of commission, right?
yeah.
They're like, all
Um,
right, C Squad, you're up.
Yeah.
Sabretooth, you're here for some reason.
he's the discount Wolverine, all right.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. Um,
What?
but yeah, it was pretty. Onslaught was like a big thing for me too, and I don't remember the whole like premise, but I remember it was like the mashup of Professor X and Magneto, right? Like they
Yeah.
became like one
It's a
entity.
it's a cool idea because like in one of the prior storyline sagas, Xavier, because it's the one where it like Magneto rips Wolverine's adamantium
Oh
skeleton,
yeah,
and he's got that's when he reveals the bone claws. But it's like you think Wolverine's dead. Like he is more messed up than even his healing factor like can't like keep up with like because like Magneto has finally done the thing that everyone's like, well, why doesn't he just he controls metal, like his skeleton is metal, why doesn't he just like end
yeah.
Wolverine once and for all? And so he does, and that pushes Xavier to like his breaking point. Xavier just like snaps, is like, all right, you know what, this guy, he's finally gone too far, like I'm gonna do what I should have done in the first place. And he uses his powers to like basically wipe Magneto's mind, right? Like,
Okay.
and but it's but what it really does is it kind of like absorbs Magneto's consciousness, his psyche, into
Okay.
Xavier's. So like kind of all through like that part of that mid part of the 90s, Xavier is like he's like Magneto's like talking to him in his dreams, and he's like being incepted by Magneto, right? Like, and so that
Right.
is like slowly corrupting him toward, and
Okay.
in all of the sort of like, you know, uh, the social unrest and the crimes against, mutantdom, like, are just finally like chipping away at Xavier, where it creates this new entity that is both Xavier and Magneto wrapped up into
Okay.
one.
Because I remember, like, not getting the whole story when I was a kid, right? Because again, and especially being a kid, getting all these comics over a vast, titles. And not only that, you don't know all the titles that you're supposed to be reading to get this full story.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I missed a lot. But one thing I definitely had was the Toy Biz Onslaught figure.
Yes.
Which was
Yeah.
he was a chunky beast.
With the little bubble in his back where you could see Xavier trapped inside.
Yeah, that always threw me off because again, I didn't know the whole backstory behind Onslaught, but I always saw the bubble in there, and I was with Professor X. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like,
I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty sweet toy.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that existed.
He is pretty cool. Yeah, and he had the clip-on claws or whatever. You can so
right, because
cool.
Onslaught had two forms. There was the one where he kind of looked like Magneto, and he had like Magneto's helmet, classic design. But then he like evolved to more of this like cockroach alien thing with like these big claws, and so the figure had these like snap-on armor pieces.
Oh, that was good. And then I always like the Phalanx figure because you press a button on his back, and like the tortured souls on his chest would like
move their mouths. The head.
It was so cool.
Yeah,
like the stuff they come up with. But
Joe Mad, he really brought a lot to X-Men at that time.
The fact that the cartoon covered so much of it, even like the Savage Land and like you mentioned Genosha and all this, and
right,
it's just the world and the depth in the stories. It's I'm excited for X-Men 97, and I hope that they do it justice.
Yeah, because I think similarly, like the comics have provided a lot of cool material, like just like Chris Claremont provided all the raw material for the 92 cartoon. I'd love to see how they take Onslaught and Operation Zero Tolerance with Bastion, and then hopefully eventually into like the Grant Morrison new X-Men stuff, like taking some of these things that were hard to follow reading them as comics as kids, or the story, it's all there's different writers, different artists. It's very in taking those core elements though and distilling them down into like episodes. I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, give me the Messiah Complex or House of M.
Yeah, no, totally. And in the the whole like, I know that the X-Men animated series like briefly kind of touched on like the legacy virus and like Kraden Creed, but I feel like that, like even that stuff could be incorporated more into the new stuff, because those were such like big aspects of the 90s comic storylines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just biased. I want to see more Cable. You know what I mean? Like I would
Nick,
love
I see you rolling your eyes.
Give me a spinoff where it's just Cable running around with a little baby Hope and a baby Bjorn.
Oh,
give me a spinoff of that, and I will watch that like so intently. Like that's all I want.
Yeah,
we got a little bit of Cable in the animated series. Smart move. They didn't really go into his backstory too much.
I'm surprised it didn't get a spin-off, because like that is, there's enough like Cable backstory, although they have in the animated series they do have like his son.
Like just give me like a story or a series just about Cable, and I'll be happy. Show Cyclops and Jean, then bring in Madeline Pryor.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like that's where they're going with X-Men 97. It's like
I hope so.
Madeline Pryor, and
it looks like Bishop's going to be prominent in it too.
Yeah, Bishop with a haircut. Although I kind of like, it's X-Men 97. It's set in 1997, and like. I kind of wish they would bring more of like the aesthetic of the comics during that time into the show. So like the mullet Bishop obviously is like iconic, but like he had the shaved head.
Shaved
Not
head,
it
yeah.
wasn't shaved, but it was like a buzz cut.
Yeah.
Post Age of Apocalypse, and again that Joe Madureira design with like the shoulder pads and stuff. I thought that was a very cool Bishop look. So yeah, maybe we'll see that costume at some point. The sort of finale to the series. I know it's not like so basically I think the way it worked was the animated series was supposed to end at season 4. So they did this big crazy finale episode. I don't know if you remember it, but it's like, Apocalypse has like he's like destroying like the time space continuum, and it's like, and Cable is like gone back in time, and like Cable like factors heavily into it, and like Apocalypse has like all the evil mutant, or bad guy mutants working for him. So he's got like Sinister and Mystique and Magneto all working for doing his bidding. And he's kidnapped like all the psychic characters. So like Jean Grey and Professor Xavier. Is this ringing bells?
It is.
Hope I'm not,
No. I can't piece it all together right now, but all that makes sense, and it definitely. I remember that stuff. So
it's an amazing, and like Psylocke is in it, and I think they even like intimate like a relationship between Archangel and Psylocke. Like they're just like, they're just giving everyone what they want for the finale, and it's like it's Apocalypse, time travel, Cable. It's a great like finale to the series, but
yes.
then they got like picked up for a 5th season that they weren't expecting. So like a lot of people had, most of like the core team had left they left the show after season 4. Like they went on to other things. Eric and Julia,
especially the animators.
Ewald. They went with a completely different studio, and they like kind of redesigned the characters. And so season 5 is like really kind of
way
its
too
own
cartoony.
thing. Yeah,
like I know it's funny to say, but we're talking about a cartoon here. But the last season was just way too cartoony. Like I don't think I ever watched the last season.
Yeah, it's super spotty for me too.
I don't think I can. I think I tried at one point because everything's on Disney Plus right now, and I think I went back and watched some key episodes. Like I went back and obviously watched Days of Future Past. How can you not?
Yeah, so good.
But then I'm like, oh, season 5. You would think the later seasons better graphics, better crisper picture, and I went like I put on some of those episodes and I'm like, the hell's this? Like,
no, not good. And, I mean, it is true
not my
of
X-Men.
So season 3 and season 4 are what, for the most part, what you're talking. Where it's like there's some the animation's awesome. Like it's just everything's firing on all cylinders. It's like it's a little weird because they had some episodes that were done by like a kind of a budget animation studio that like didn't deliver, and so they had to be like redone by another studio. So like there were kind of these weird episodes that were like done in production during season 3 that didn't come out until like season 4 and the beginning of season 5. So like the episode order, I think it's a little mixed up. So there's like, it's just like really inconsistent across the board at that point.
In the 90s. Yeah, it was the 90s. Who cares, man? Jesus.
It's funny too, because I remember like as a kid, I'd kind of, checked, I remember seeing the Apocalypse, the finale, season 4, and then kind of being like ready to move on from X-Men. Like, other things were the cool new thing. And then I did, however, end up seeing the like finale to the whole series, the end of season 5. And just kind of randomly seeing it on TV and be like, oh, this kind of feels, so X-Men's still going, but it's also like ending. It's like this big kind of like wrap up ending. And and it does have like a cool, like they do give it like a final ending that's going to be where X-Men 97 is picking up from.
All right, so maybe we'll have to power through it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's worth at least skipping to like the last episode, which kind of draws inspiration from, I think it's in the comics, it's X-Men 200, where it's like the trial of Magneto, and
Hmm.
that ends with Xavier getting like kind of mortally injured, and he goes off with Lilandra to the Shi'ar to like,
Okay.
because that's like, they might have the technology to like heal his wounds, but it means he has to like live in the far reaches of space, and so he passes on the role of headmaster of the X-Men to Magneto. This is like
Huh.
the mid 80s, I want to say,
Okay.
or like late 80s in the comics. So like then there's this whole period of Magneto being like the worst headmaster that like has ever been, because like the poor guy, I mean, like the mutant massacre happens on his watch, and it's like
Oh
he can't
Jesus.
keep the New Mutants in line at all, and they have no faith in him. And,
You're
Wow.
not my headmaster.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
not the Xavier of me.
I, I spent 4 seasons fighting you. Why do I have to listen to you now?
Right. Imagine how confused all those students were. Like, okay,
Yeah,
like
no, it
you're
didn't.
literally
Like,
trying to kill me.
week.
Like,
It did not
Yeah.
go well. But so I think X-Men 97 might be picking up from like a similar place, because like they even have Magneto in that kind of
yeah,
that costume he had at that time. Like,
it's a badass costume.
yeah, it's
It's
cool.
a pretty good looking costume.
Big M. So he
Everything's
doesn't
better than
forget how
him,
to spell
right?
his name. It's like he and
Right.
Apocalypse, they need to be reminded what their initials are.
I,
At least
I
Apocalypse
used
has like a big like belt buckle. It's just a big belt buckle.
Yeah.
Like, come on, you've been to Texas, right?
I used to work with a guy who actually had his first and last name tattooed on him. First name, it was his first name, and it was written so that if you went like this, you could read it. And then his last name was written down his leg, like his opposite leg on the back of it. And I was like, what?
Awkward. Yeah.
Maybe he's like covering his bases so he can be identified if he's blown up.
I was more.
Was
I
he
was
a heavy
like,
drinker?
I was gonna say. I actually asked him. I was like, so do you just pass out drunk a lot, and you need people to know who you are? Like, what? Why do you have both your first and your last name?
Why is your address tattooed to the bottom of your
It's
foot?
like, you ever seen the movie Memento?
Yeah.
He just like, got all the tattoos all over him to remember.
Yeah.
When he blacks out.
Yeah. It wasn't anything
Jesus.
cool like that. I'll be honest. I forget his actual answer, but I was like, "That's dumb."
So, you talking about season 5?
Yeah.
I like the designs that have been shown for X-Men 97.
Yeah.
But now I'm nervous about the animation. Like, especially nowadays with animation that comes out nowadays in like, 2023 and 24 is we're in now. Animation's so hit or miss. Like, there's so many things that look great to me, but then there's so many things that just look, and we mentioned this before, lifeless and dull, where it's just flat. And like that's half the reason why I've mentioned before I can't get into a lot of like new anime. Like, I used to love anime and stuff like that, but like new anime,
it's that dead digital line.
Yeah, exactly. And like I'm hoping that this doesn't come off like that, because it does take, at least me, it takes me out of the show. I can't like get as invested in it if I can't, and it's not to say like I can get past design choices, right? Like I was born in 84. I grew up in, the peak of awesomeness, you could say. If you were born in like the mid to late 80s, you experienced everything that the 80s had to offer and everything that the 90s had to offer, and you got the best of everything.
Right. Yeah.
So I grew up with Transformers Generation 1. I grew up with G.I. Joe Real American Hero. And those were, what I loved as a kid.
Yeah.
But then they came out with like G.I. Joe Renegades and Transformers Prime. And both of those were extremely different designs than what we knew, what we grew up with. But there is the heart in them. They weren't computer drawn. I mean, okay, Prime was
Yeah,
because I mean there was
right.
like 3D, but
Yeah,
there was still it was fluid. It felt
yeah.
organic. It didn't feel stiff, and
And
that's what a
yeah,
lot of
if
things.
memory serves, it like they tried to give things kind of like a painted texture with that
Yeah,
show. Like there was like
yeah,
great, they used like gradients, like kind of on the tech. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I kind of remember that being like
yeah,
they're going for kind of an illustrated look,
yeah,
even though it was CG.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
and
yeah, I mean, I think so. In the basically all of the like the 80s and early 90s cartoons like benefited from the unfortunately a big economic recession in Japan. So Japan, they were like hitting like reaching new heights with their animated movies, like just I mean movies like Akira, like
oh
just
yeah,
every just beautiful, like lavish, insane productions, like so much work, like animators at the just the peak of their talent.
yeah,
And then
for sure.
but then there was an economic recession, and so a lot of these studios had to take on like outside work, foreign work. And so cartoons like Transformers and Real Ghostbusters and
Yeah,
Batman the animated series, like they all benefited from these like incredible Japanese animation studios at the top of their game. I mean, people that would go on to like work for Studio Ghibli and that sort of thing. So it was like really high level animation, in old school like traditional animation at the time. It was just like this
yeah,
amazing like golden period, that then sort of like slowly waned as we got further into the 90s, and it just sort of it became you know I think most of the productions shifted to Korea. um, and
yeah,
actually, so in actually X-Men the animated series is like one of the few cartoons that like didn't benefit from like I said,
oh
prior to the X-Men
man.
had Toei doing the animation, I believe, which is so it's like super high level. X-Men the animated series, it's like it's I think mostly there's mostly Korean animation studios. It's just a different kind of a different thing. And so certainly like the some of those season one episodes of X-Men are like pretty rough looking, and it got
Yeah,
better as it went. By the time you get to like the Dark Phoenix
yeah,
saga,
oh, oh yeah, that was
yeah,
beautiful.
that was mostly I think a studio called ACOM, which was a South Korean studio that also did like episodes of Batman the animated series. And so
Okay, cool.
um but so that's sort of like the backstory there, and we just don't really, it's not the same situation anymore. Like we don't really have access to those animators or that animation,
Yeah,
and everything's like digital now. I think you
yeah,
have to like, I don't know, I think like I'm trying to think of like some of the modern shows that I think do pretty, that feel like more in that spirit, are like I think Rise of the TMNT, like that this most
okay,
recent,
yeah,
it's not on anymore, but it was like it was 2D animated Ninja Turtle show.
yep,
Has some amazing, just beautiful action animation. It's like supposed to be like more of like comedic and cartoony and
yeah,
silly, but like lavish animation. But it's digital, and they actually have kind of like they're digital lines, but they're like there's a sketchiness to it. Like they're
yeah,
trying to make these look like have that like that drawn energy.
yeah,
So it's and then I also think of Steven Universe. It's like a really
yeah, oh yeah,
great looking 2D animated show. So like it's still and the like technology is getting better all the time. Like so, I think things are it's getting better. Like we're probably never going to have that like get back to that like hand drawn,
yeah,
We're never gonna get back to the hand drawn cartoons.
but we might get close through technology to doing a better
yeah.
job of
reproducing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
just humanize it, and
Yeah,
like that's really what like I want from it.
yeah.
Like you said, it can be done through computers, but there's stuff like when was it? To 2014, around then, when they did the X-Men animes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Those are just so stiff. Like
yeah,
I can't I couldn't get into those. It was one of those things, and like that's what worries me about a lot of things is, and why I'm hoping the animation is good for X-Men '97, um, because if it looks bad to you or the animation doesn't feel right, then you might not give it a chance, and it might be a
yeah,
phenomenal story. Like, can you imagine? Like, imagine if if someone made the story and plot of like Exo Squad, but they animated it like those stiff animes, like the X-Men anime.
yeah,
It's
Thundercats
like
Ho.
or Thundercats, yeah, Thundercats Roar or something like that. It's like Exo Squad is one of the best written cartoons that I've ever seen.
yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Well, it's the
But
same. I think it's a lot of the same people that worked on X-Men the animated series.
yeah,
Um, like I think maybe Mark Edens, the guy who wrote Night of the Sentinels, work on Exo Squad, and all the designs are
okay.
Will Mineo, who did a lot of the early designs for X-Men. So there's like a lot
Okay.
of similarities.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, but there you go. That just goes to show with the right team, the right crew, whatever, it can be done so well.
Yeah.
You know.
But the writing is a big part. So like I said, it's like X-Men, it's not always the prettiest animation. It's not quite like, Batman the animated series level, like,
Yeah.
especially those that first there's a lot of choppy, looking stuff, things not drawn, on model or whatever, but the writing is so good. The
Yeah.
characters are so good. Everything's so well like structured. There's so much care behind it. Like you really feel like the passion of the creators come through, that it you still love it today. So so
Right.
that's the sort of devil's, like, I'm a big animation guy. I love it. Like if something is well animated, that can be somewhat enough to like override like
Yeah, for sure.
Cheesy
but
dialogue and chintzy storylines.
yeah, if somebody animates like a head like moving like in space in 3D, it's like, man, that's
Yeah.
the like that little extra detail that I love. It's supposed to just like standing there while the mouth moves, and then
Yeah.
you cut to a different angle.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah. Exactly.
but if the writing's there,
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, that's the
Yeah.
important thing.
I'm the same way. Like, I want to watch something visually appealing to me.
Yeah.
And if it's too stiff, it's going to take me out of it. Like when I was a kid, one of the shows that I used to like, piggybacking off of like the Power Rangers trend, was the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, right?
Oh
And
yeah, right.
right, and then
Yeah.
finding
Confused
out,
with VR Troopers.
yeah,
Don't
not
get
VR
those two
Troopers or
confused.
Yeah,
Big Bad
yeah.
Beetleborgs, or and finding out as I got older that was based off an anime called Gridman,
Yeah, yeah,
and then
Gridman.
I think 2018 or something like that, they made a Gridman anime, like a new one.
Yes,
I was
yeah,
excited. I went to watch it. It's the stiff, like,
yeah,
it's beautiful if it was stills, but the animation, like, it's them standing there, no movement, and then their mouths just like moving and talking. It's not like, you get the sharp movements and stuff like that, not like fluid and stuff. And that's what made like those old like X-Men '97, Batman animated series. It's fluid, right? When they
right.
walk and move, like they're moving. It's not like they're sitting there talking and like
Yeah,
punctuating everything.
and it's the little things too. It's like they'll put as much time into somebody like putting a glass down, as they will somebody punching a bad guy or whatever. Like I think that, and I think part of that too is that's, I mean, this is just what I've learned from YouTube basically, but that was due more to that was like the American style, that was like the Japanese style of animation combining with the American style of like storytelling and pacing, because it's
Sure.
more of a Japanese thing too, rather than you cut to like a shot of like someone's food on their table while you're hearing them say all this dialogue, so you're not animating like, but it's
Yeah,
but then
right.
when there's like a big action moment, then you dial in all the lavish animation. They call it
Sure.
sakuga, I believe. And so
Okay.
so it's like it's more of this sense of like, we're going to pick and choose where we really put all of our animation energy, and everything else will just be like, as minimal as we can possibly get away with. And so I don't know if it's maybe more of a shift towards that style of that way of thinking, even in American productions, that is
Sure.
creating that, that sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it's no, it's a good way to look at it and think about the whole like product as a whole. With why waste all the time and energy for something simple when you can put all that into the big, action sequences and like the over the top stuff. I mean, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. But you do
So
miss that, like, because sometimes that's where like the real character lies, in just like the way somebody, nods
oh,
their
I'm
head.
saying logically and financially that makes sense. Not for my entertainment
Not what I want
mind
to
and my
see.
brain. Like it's not what I want to see. It just makes sense. Okay, sometimes those two don't line up. Okay. So
True.
did you ever collect any of the toys as a kid from the animated
Yeah.
series?
Yeah, definitely. It's mostly like secondhand, because like I don't remember like going into seeing them on the pegs ever. Or if I did, it was maybe like the older figure. I was like, that's not brown
The grandpa
costume
toys.
Wolverine. Was it? Has grandpa
Right.
toys like, uh, but there was like there would be like these collectible shops that
Yep.
had like, the case of figures that like, they were new at this. I didn't even realize that they were like, when you're a kid, again, you don't like, time is all over the place. So I was like,
It's
oh,
true.
these are the old toys for the cartoon that I'm watching.
Yeah.
But I remember getting like Cyclops and Gambit with the like vinyl coat, and
Oh
Storm.
yeah. The
Yeah,
final.
so
Oh man.
yeah,
Wait, didn't Storm have like
yeah, it was like a
a,
flicky thing
a thing
that,
that kind of like did like tiny little sparks or something?
yeah, yeah, super cool action
It
feature.
just lit up and she came with a little lightning bolt to hold in her hand because
And it
she's Zeus.
was, yeah, and it was the white costume Storm, because I remember like, because they had the black costume at the
What?
same time, and
Okay.
I was like, well, that's not what she looks like on the cartoon. Like, I want
I'll
the cartoon one.
yeah, I'll remember the black
And it,
suit.
well, because it's, and again, that like, because in that figure's mold, I only realized it later. It's like, that's based on, I I guess, more of like the Mark Silvestri Outback era Storm, because
Huh.
she's got like a crop top. She's got long hair, but it's like it's like a flat top at the top of it in the sculpt, which is how he was drawing her
Okay.
in the late 80s. And she had the
I never
big
pay attention to that. Interesting.
lightning bolt across. So it wasn't really Jim Lee. Like, the sculpt isn't a Jim Lee Storm, but they like repainted it to look like it.
All right.
Anyway, these are the things.
Interesting.
When I was a kid, I remember like going to the same shop because I really wanted Beast. Like, I loved Beast. He was one of my favorite characters. I was
Yeah.
looking for that Beast figure. And I remember the toy, he has like yellow eyes, right? He has, just like glowing
Yeah.
yellow eyes. On the cartoon, he's got blue eyes. So I remember like asking the guy at the store, it's like, well, do you have the Beast that has like the blue eyes? Like, I don't want like mean looking Beast. And the guy's like,
I
this
don't
is
want
the only
this
Beast there
ridiculous
is,
version.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Random toy man.
I
You
was like,
tell me
oh,
where the real one is.
yeah. So I was like, I'll keep looking for the real Beast. Like,
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Oh my god, that was a terrible gimmick. That never worked for me.
yeah, it wasn't light piping, that's what you're talking about, where it's like they have like a clear
No.
plastic piece, like.
No, his gimmick was like he did like a backflip or was supposed to do a backflip. It was
Oh
like
yeah.
Oh yeah,
springing at his hips.
you pushed him forward. Sorry, you pushed him forward. He was supposed to like.
Supposed to,
Yeah,
yeah.
his
Never,
feet
Yeah,
never
yeah.
spin.
worked.
He has like I actually that's the only figure I still have that I always kept.
Nice.
I did get it eventually, and so I still have it. And he also has I think he has this like weird little like thing on his back, like this weird little wheel thing that I don't know what
Yeah.
that's supposed to be. Like, because you
Yeah, I
hang
thought
him
that was
from
some,
that
like,
if you want to hang him upside down, maybe.
I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
maybe.
don't know.
Did we figure it out?
I think we need a card back.
But
It's one of
yeah,
the.
the X-Men figure. So like X-Men is one of those things that like I just have always carried with me in my life. Like it's just like I never stopped being an X-Men fan, because like then when the animated series was over, by that point I was like fully into the comics.
Yeah.
And then I was collecting the toys all throughout. So like, I had those like early Toy Biz toys, but then I had the sort of the more sculpted, detailed. Like I had the ones with like they had like a light up feature, and they were making them look more like Joe Mad's drawings, and then the like Onslaught stuff, and then
Yeah.
Water Wars. I was just like,
Oh man, the Water Wars ones.
because I was trying to get like a complete collection, right? So I was like, Water
Yeah.
Wars Storm. I was like, finally, I got a Storm that looks like Storm, and I've got Wolverine in his like tiger stripe costume, and I was like, just trying to get to that Jean Grey, like the Jean Grey
jeez.
classic costume, and it's just like it never really. So like my collection was like never complete. Like it was just
Yeah.
always like,
I
and that kept me collecting,
I loved the Water Wars Nightcrawler, because that was the
Yeah.
Age of Apocalypse one. We had like the drapery over him, and
Yeah,
he came with
it was
Excalibur
the
and stuff.
Excalibur. It was the Excalibur one, the version.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
Okay,
like
yeah,
he had
yeah.
he had like he had the goatee and the like crop top
Yeah.
or the buzz cut, like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a great figure. And then I remember the I forget the exact term they used, but it was like the monster ones where you could turn like Rogue into like pretty much Sauron, almost like a pterodactyl.
Yeah, it's like
And
a bat.
Mystique turned into a furry. Like
Right.
it was just
Yeah.
like you could give her arms, boots, and like a head and like a chest piece. It just made her look like someone dressed as a furry at a convention.
Yeah, she was like a Yeti or something. Yeah. But that was like the best looking Mystique figure
It
we'd
was.
gotten up to that point.
It was fantastic.
And Rogue was it was like that was the best, that was the most accurate like Age of Apocalypse Rogue.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they must have because they must have had like a third wave of Age of Apocalypse figures that didn't like materialize. So they probably just had to
around,
use this
repurpose.
sculpt, put a goblin head on, monster armor. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Oh, I remember the robot fighter X-Men, where it was Storm in that like Joe Mad costume with the the hair that's like cut on the sides, but it has like these like long. It's like a super. I hope they do that hairstyle in X-Men '97, because that is like classic late '90s Storm aesthetic.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, there was some good stuff back then.
Mystique with the animal figure stuff. I was like, what are what are you guys talking about?
Nick's got a new
Mike's
furry
description
X-Men.
is pretty correct.
Yeah, she's a furry.
Without the weird armor stuff, that is
great.
a pretty that looks amazing as a figure.
Yeah, it's a perfect Mystique, because like I don't think they had really done like a proper Mystique.
I think that was the first Mystique we got.
Yeah,
I can't remember one before that.
because they were like basically all the female figures were like repaints of Rogue prior to that. It was like
yeah, you had Rogue. Oh, here's Polaris.
Exactly. So Mystique, they may have, if memory serves, there may have been like a Rogue repaint of Mystique, where she just or Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four line. That was the other female figure. It was like, she's Spider Woman. She's
yeah,
Dazzler, whatever.
Well, I mean, female figures don't sell unless you're crazy collectors like us and want.
They didn't then, apparently. Yeah.
They used to upset me as a kid. Like
Yeah.
if I want the toys, I want them all. I want to
I-
complete the team. Like give me
exactly.
the women, the kids, like the men, everything. You know,
Yeah.
I wanted figures of. It was never in a cartoon, but it was a comic arc of the X babies.
Oh yeah.
I wanted
Man,
figures of those.
I'm surprised we still have not gotten X babies like that. You know, I know that like in the Toy Biz days of Marvel Legends, they teased a line where they would each figure would have come with a little like X baby
Yes.
pack
Yep.
in statue, and it the line went to Hasbro at that point, and the whole thing got dropped. But I'm surprised Marvel Legends hasn't done X babies because there's you've got the like 80s, the original like 80s X babies, but then they also like came back in the 90s with
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the more modern Cyclops and like
Yeah. That's so cool. That's the other thing too is like the first Cyclops they gave us was the X Factor one. I remember losing my shit when I saw the Jim Lee figure. Like
yeah,
they finally made it. They finally gave us the animated series. Because back then we didn't know that was Jim Lee's Cyclops. It was the animated series Cyclops. And, seeing that and like, he still had the button and his optics lit up and stuff. And he had
and those straps, those belt straps and stuff. Yeah, I mean, so cool.
Yeah, that's all we wanted. Just like accurate representations of the things that we watch every single day.
Yeah,
we're not asking for much.
Give me what I want.
Yeah,
nothing less.
Did you ever get into any of the other cartoon series like Evolution?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean like my X-Men fandom like hit like a fever pitch when the like movies came out when that first the one in 2000s, because it was like it's like X-Men, it was like that felt like that grew up with me, right? Like you start with the cartoon, then you get into the comics, and the comics are when you're like an angsty preteen, and it's like, oh, it's like now it's like anime, everyone's got like spiky hair, like the comics are so cool. And then when you get to certain age, like now there's a live action movie, and it's like being treated with like this like seriousness, and like it's like they're trying to really like make this accessible to like everyone, not just comic book people. Like
they got big names.
Yeah. Well, plus the first ever I gotta use air quotes with this, the first ever live action X-Men movie, right? Because I don't know if you guys remember, there was a made for TV movie called Generation X.
Oh yeah. I remember like terrible. I wanted to see that so bad, and I missed it, or it wasn't. I couldn't watch it when it was on, and it was just like, well, there goes my only chance to see live action X-Men.
I set my VCR when I was a kid, and I think it cut off like part of it, and I was so devastated because they only aired it once.
6-hour mode.
Yeah, right.
I remember hearing it at the next. I think it was the next day. I went to a comic book store, and there were two guys talking about it, and I was just like listening. I was like, "Oh, what did Emma Frost say on TV?"
Did you end up seeing it ever? Eventually,
maybe some parts on YouTube. I have never seen the whole thing, like all the way through. It is
rough.
It's just
it is very rough. You see Husk at the end in the Generation X suit, which looks cool.
Right.
It's one of those like, 30 seconds at the end where she like shows up. She's like, "All right, we ready to do this?" And then roll credits. And it's like, God damn it!
Not.
No, we're going home. We got canceled before this ended. Okay, so we're done. This is supposed to be a 2-parter, but how like
it was actually a pilot. I just looked it up.
It was a TV movie.
Yeah, well, it was right, but it was a pilot episode that the movie did so bad they were like,
so
right.
Like it was so funny because like how like Husk, it looked like a girl, but she was like jacked and all that, super strong. Like that's like one of her mutant abilities.
Yeah, they didn't go with the skin shredding angle from the comics.
Instead, and Chamber, he didn't like, it wasn't the bursting flame out of there. It was like optic things. He was pretty much
Yeah,
a
it was
discount Cyclops,
yeah.
but he's in the movie. He messes with people and is like, "Oh yeah, I got X-ray vision too," and they're like, "No, fuck you, no, you don't." He's like, "Yeah, I do." But then all of a sudden, like he literally gets X-ray vision, and he watches Husk as she's like undresses, and like it's definitely a girl like this. And then once they go like this, it's a guy with like this jacked up back and like meaty hands and stuff. It's the funniest thing, dude. It's so good.
Oh my god.
But yeah, but so there was that, and like that gave us hope and a tease that just left us flat. But then yeah, the X-Men movie, the first one, like when you see Wolverine hold the guy up against the wall and his fist there, and Hugh Jackman's fist there, and the claws come out, and you see it like it
Just
was
the two.
You know, it wasn't it wasn't computer graphics. It was like real, like they built like a fake hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it was so good.
Yeah, all that practical stuff. I mean, and it's funny because you watch it now and it feels like an indie movie. Like it feels like so. I mean, like an indie movie by the standards of 10 years ago, right? Like,
movies that we get now.
Yeah, everything's like on fishing line, and it's all like having to be really clever. It's like having a PA off screen like open a door. It's like, oh, someone used their psychic powers. Like, but I remember.
They just go to the Walmart.
Yeah, because but it makes sense because it's like that movie's like a pretty big risk, right? It's like superhero movies were not a thing, and they certainly did not look like that.
They definitely stepped it up for X-Men too.
Oh yeah. Because by then it's like
they had something
thing, yeah.
And then they just
that whole Nightcrawler. I haven't seen it in a while, but I imagine the Nightcrawler sequence in the beginning like still holds up.
It's still good. It's still really good.
So I had heard like the rumors or an article that they were making a live action X-Men movie. And I remember going to a movie theater and seeing a poster in the lobby, this giant X. And I was like, oh my God, it's coming.
Chills, and you're like, yeah.
It was for the X-Files movie.
Oh no!
And it was like, I was like, and I was like, oh, I know what that is. It's coming. And it was only, but then a year later, then you got the like big silver X. You're like, oh, there it is. And I remember when that first trailer dropped, early days of the internet, right? Like being on the website with the like embedded, the tiny Flash player, and like this like things waiting for it to load, like waiting and like playing just a little bit at a time, and like go off and like eat dinner and come back. It's like, okay, a few more seconds have downloaded, and like and just and then seeing that, because like maybe you'd seen stuff of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine or ever plainclothes, but then seeing that first shot of like, it was like kind of like an overhead shot of Cyclops and Jean Grey and Storm in the uniforms, and being like, oh my God, there it is. There's the X-Men in live action. Amazing. I couldn't believe that we had arrived.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is where we're headed, guys. And then that really did prove to studios like, okay, you can make money here.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the
not with X3 though, not with X3.
Yeah, I know, but it because I think at that time this seems like a quaint concept, but they weren't expecting things to really go past 2 movies. They were like, well, by the time you get to the third one, like everyone's ready to be done with it. It's only now that like they're on the like 12th Spider-Man movie, like these movies are now just supposed to like go on forever, right? And like, but back then it was like, it's the third one, like no one's gonna go to that, like just get in and get out, like
I went to the midnight premiere. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, same here.
Oh yeah, no, I'm so excited, but it's like
I took a test drive in a car, and I was like, I'll be back in a few minutes, and I drove to the theater and bought tickets.
It's like a Seinfeld episode. Like, excuse me, sir, but did you buy movie tickets in this car?
Nope.
We can't. You have to buy it now. But yeah, I mean, I just I think that the movie also speaks to the unique nature of X-Men as a comic book, because, and again, I think this is sort of like what clicked with me as like a little kid trying to find that superhero book for me, is that it's beyond superheroes, right? It's beyond comic books. It's like it is like a science fiction concept, right? And again,
Yeah,
when Mike, when you talk about how the animated series created a world, that's what you get from like science fiction, where it's like, okay, this one thing is different, there are mutants in the world, and how is that going to change everything? How are all of our different nations, how is that going to change how we look at one another, our policy, like create,
yeah,
and using, obviously using it as a tool to talk about very real world things. It's a it's a one, it's a direct metaphor, right, for things that actually go on in our lives, and it's the world that we live in, but just with
yeah,
this one little like heightened element. So I think that that's part of what makes X-Men different from any other comic book property, is that you can take away the costumes and the code names and the good and evil, like, and you can just have it be about there are mutants. What does
yeah,
that do?
Right.
And get the audience asking, like, yeah, how would I feel if that were the world I lived in? Like,
yeah, yeah.
what if I was a mutant? What if I was afraid of
I am mutant right now. I don't know.
yeah, exactly.
And I mean, they
Uh,
even explore like the different like parallels to that, and like the one extreme to the other, right? 'Cause you got people like Storm or Cyclops who can just walk around and they're fine, but then they
yeah,
even show you like the other side of things, where like here's the Morlocks. They're
yeah,
all disfigured. They can't even come up to see the light of day without getting chastised or people
yeah, or
screaming and stuff.
yeah,
So
Beast and Nightcrawler. But also, I
yeah,
think that's like, even as a kid, I remember like that was also a necessary element with like superheroes, is that there has to be this element where it is both a blessing and a curse.
yeah, true.
Like Batman, he can do all this amazing stuff. He's got all these amazing gadgets. He lost his parents. Like,
Yep.
X-Men, it's like they are born with amazing superpowers, but Cyclops can never look at anything with his bare eyes without destroying it. Rogue
Yeah.
can never touch another human being. Like
I mean,
they can do
that
amazing
murder.
things, but it comes at a cost.
Right.
And I think that like that creates like a resonant uh, conflict that is both aspirational, because of it is like they can do
Yeah.
amazing things. They're super powered. That's the fantasy, but at the same time, it's grounded in that truth that we all know, which is that like nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever, and also it makes it interesting to see, that flip side to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole like the grass isn't always greener on the other side, or like you know. I don't know. What I'm trying to think of, but you know what I mean. Like the whole like
It's not.
concept.
There's
I
always
don't.
a downside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think like Fantastic Four, same thing. Like, they have these fantastic powers, like these adventurers. Reed Richards turned his best friend into a monster. Like,
Yeah.
and the
Right.
thing has to, and even though the thing is like he embraces that, he's okay with that. Like I remember, it's the movie's not great, but like the scene in the Fantastic Four movie where he can't pick up the wedding ring. His fiance,
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
yeah,
puts down the ring, and his mutated hands can't pick it up. It's like that's like a powerful moment, and I think it, that's one of the elements that I think gives Marvel superheroes like a distinct edge over characters that are just gods, or
Y-
just like all
Yeah.
powerful.
True.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, like Superman's got it pretty good, right? The worst thing is like, oh no, I can't go near kryptonite, which doesn't exist here. Like
yeah,
except for Lex keeps finding it like everywhere. Him and Batman are like, we got a stockpile. Like
right?
basically, we blew up the planet. We split it halvesies so that we just have an infinite
yeah. Well,
stock.
that's the thing. So Superman does kind of fit that, because it's like, yes, he has all these powers, but his home world was destroyed, was blown up, and
Yeah,
he's
like,
forever like
yeah,
an alien walking among people. Like, and I think, and Spider-Man, similar to X-Men, it's like, okay, he's like a superhero, he's got he can do all this stuff. Everyone hates him. They think he's a bad guy. They
he's a
think he's
menace.
a menace. Yeah, like the X-Men, they fight to protect a world that hates and fears them.
Yeah,
Like
which
that is
that's deep.
such, yeah, that's such a resonant concept that, like, can generate just like endless stories, and 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 it's evergreen,
And it
right?
has.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, even like the with the cartoon, the comics, and it being in a cartoon, like they touch on the whole like Mutant Registration Act
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and they literally take superheroes in comics and make it um political, right?
Yeah.
But like their own political, right? No real world shit, nothing. They're not trying to divide lines between, left, right, whatever. It's their own thing.
Well, because
But
it's
it's
like they have like a three-pronged structure, right? It's like, I think like the best stories, it's like a courtroom. It's like there are two sides, and you're trying to weigh both sides. You're trying to figure out like what's the path you're going to take. Like that,
Right.
like the point of a story is like a protagonist who is like the audience's viewpoint, like making a decision what view of the world they want to believe in. And it can't be so obvious that like one view is right and the other one's wrong, because that's just
yeah,
not
for sure.
interesting, and it's also not really true to life. So X-Men, again, is like that perfect thing where you've got Magneto on and the extreme mutants on one side saying the humans, they'll always fear us, they will always try to destroy us, it's what they do. We
Yeah,
have been blessed with the ability to move beyond that. Like, why are we spending any time trying to get along with the humans? The
yeah,
humans are saying, we're afraid of these mutants. Like, they are,
Get them.
they have insane, incredible powers. Like, it's destructive. We got to do something to protect ourselves against that. And then the X-Men are somewhere in between, where they're trying to
yeah,
navigate, like, how do we have both? Like, how do we coexist? How do we meet in the middle here? Like, how do we find balance?
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's a very, because it has that like three-pronged like structure. It really,
Right.
again, like, it's more than just good guys versus bad guys, like, good and evil. It's like they're more complex issues.
Imagine a whole society like that, like with the Superman complex, right? Like Superman can be just and good because of a certain thing. But when you have mutants and like the Brotherhood and a bunch of these villains
It's
that are
OD.
essentially gods and mere humans, mortals without the X gene are just ants to them, and they can just
Yeah.
squash us. But they put up with all our bullshit, and they put up with the hate and the bigotry and stuff like that. And that even that tells something to these villains, right? Like Magneto could just crush everybody,
Literally.
but he
He's
doesn't
thought
because
about it.
he's still he's still fighting
Yeah.
for the freedom and the acceptance, because that in the end that's all they want. They don't want to rule. They just want to be accepted, and they're tired of the bullshit and having to fight for just people to be open minded.
To live by themselves, how to live as themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, on the one hand, it's like mutants can have these incredibly destructive capabilities. So it's like, well, Mutant Registration Act, like, at least know, who's
Who's
out there, who
what?
can do what, but like, that's that's a dystopian concept, because it's like
yeah,
people, like, you know having to register these things, and what if the information falls into the wrong hands, and what if the
exactly.
government decides, like, we're going to build a sentinel program, and we're going to,
No,
like,
they'll
if we
never
need to
do that.
restrain you, like, it's public safety,
If
right? Like,
only.
so it's a huge infringement on rights. And yeah, so it's like the issues become very complex. and you
They
can
Yeah.
become
see
more
different
real.
sides, and specifically for Magneto, in the cartoons, they really lean into his whole backstory and why he's seen what human beings will do to each other, but
Yeah.
in his past. Um and I think that's another example. Like Magneto in the X-Men animated series is great, because in again the comics, it's like he kind of goes through all these like personality changes. Like he goes from just being like a standard villain to like suddenly more of like a nuanced, humanized guy with a tragic backstory. But then it's like trying to reconcile, like, well, but then why was he like a crazy villain before, and then he becomes like evil again, and like it's just like whatever writer like wants like the bad Magneto versus the good Magneto, whereas
He's
the
bipolar. That's it.
yeah, where the animated series is in the animated series is like, no, it's just we'll he'll be this. And there's a like the finale, the finale of the season 1 is great, is such a good, it's like everything we're talking about, like kind of perfectly tied together. And it's the Sentinels have so like Magneto kid, so like you want it, the episode before it is Days of Future Past, where we see that like the assassination of Senator Kelly is going to lead
Yeah.
to this nightmare future where the Sentinels like control everything, and like mutants are in camps, and it's just like in the X-Men are dead, like. So
Yeah.
Bishop goes back in time to like prevent the assassination, but it ends with Senator Kelly being abducted, right, by Magneto. And so the X-Men are still going to be blamed for the abduction. And so they're in this sort of
Yeah.
the stakes are very clear. It's like, well, if anything happens to Senator Kelly, like the X-Men are going to go down for it, and that we know that that's going to set into motion all the events that lead to Days of Future Past, right? So Magneto's got Senator Kelly and he's threatening him, but then the Sentinels show up and they take Senator Kelly, and they take him to Master Mold, who reveals that his plan is to replace the brains of all of, like, the leaders in the world with machine brains, right?
Right.
Because and brilliantly, the Sentinels, because I think it's like Bolivar Trask, the creator of the Sentinels. He's like, you weren't programmed to do this. You were only programmed to protect human beings from mutants. And Master Mold goes, yeah, but mutants are human beings. So
Yeah.
therefore, we've
Yeah.
decided that you need to be protected from yourselves. So the only way to do that is to like replace all your world leaders with Sentinels, with machines, basically. So it's like this great the robotic, the undeniable truth is that mutants and humans are the same. They are one. They need to act like that, which
Yeah.
is like a beautiful message. But it's also like this, this dark twist of fate, where it's like, well, yeah, so you can't handle uh taking care of yourselves and your brother, so like we're gonna turn you all into robots, and like that's the way we'll have peace, right? And so the X-Men, they show up, and they're and there's like they the first two episodes, like the X-Men get their butts handed to them by like a handful of Sentinels, and now it's revealed that there are thousands of Sentinels
Yeah.
built by Master Mold, and it's like this big final
Just
fight.
pumping them out.
There's so many Sentinels. There's swarms of Sentinels. You're like, how are the X-Men going to do this? And like, it's a suicide mission, essentially. They're like, we've got to get Senator Kelly back, because like otherwise, like, it's going to lead to a future that like none of us want to live in. So, and Magneto is there, and Magneto's been defeated by a Sentinel, and he's like, you're fools, to fight to protect a world that hates and fears you. He's like, you're fools, brave fools, he says as he watches them like fly off. And so the X-Men are like, that's what they do, it's what they stand for, fighting for a positive future, even when it seems hopeless. And so they show up, they're fighting the Sentinels, they're saving Senator Kelly, and they're trying to get out. But then Master Mold literally breaks through a mountain, and he's like, I am the embodiment of your doom. And then and then Xavier, and you're like, yeah, how are the X-Men going to get out of this one? And then Xavier appears in the X-Jet, and he's flying the X-Jet, and it's loaded up with TNT and explosives, and he's gonna fly this thing into the Sentinel and just like make the ultimate sacrifice, right? And then the Han Solo moment of the show is Magneto is there. Like Magneto has been moved by the X-Men's bravery, and so he's like I'm Xavier. I'm not gonna let you die alone. Like, and so he puts his magnetic shield around the X-Jet, which protects it from Master Mold's like blast. So it's like, well, if Magneto wasn't there, the X-Jet would be destroyed by this like repulsor blast, and that would be it because Magneto is moved by the X-Men's sacrifice bravery. He shows up, he shields the X-Jet, so Xavier is able to like, eject just in time and send it full of the explosives into Matt. So like it's like this beautiful moment of like everyone coming together, like saying, look, we maybe all can't agree on on how to achieve the future that we want, but we can all agree that we want there to be a better future than where we're at. Right.
Yeah.
There
Common
needs to
goal,
be
they
a
just don't know the
future.
path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful culmination to that first season.
Speaking of Days of Future Past and Sentinels, how cool is it that we pretty much got a version of that in a live action movie?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love that. Like Sentinels were a little disappointing, right? I was
Yeah, I
hoping for
feel like
like
we're still owed some proper Sentinels
some
in
40
the
foot
movies.
tall Sentinels.
Yeah,
But I mean, they looked the part. They
yeah.
didn't do anything, but they looked the part.
They almost got them at the end. What are you talking about, bud?
Yeah. No,
They
no,
were
no.
like right there.
No, I mean the 80s Sentinels, not the future Sentinels.
Yeah, which
The
those were kind
future
of almost like the Phalanx. They were
just
like these kind of shapeshifter
absorbing the
things, right?
powers and stuff. And
Yeah,
that whole future sequence was so cool.
yeah, yeah,
That like
Oh, the
yeah,
movie?
yeah. Yeah, when they're like, they got like Warpath is keeping an eye out for the Sentinels or like tracking the next safe spot and the
yeah. It's
whole
quite a strange assembly of X-Men characters. It's like Blink,
I
right,
like
and
that. I love Blink.
Sunspot.
I love Blake.
Yeah,
She would be like on my fantasy school football team.
that was.
I
I
lo-
think that was one of the more interesting things about that movie is you go into that. Like I think I saw that movie in midnight release as well, and I went into that movie, and I could hear the people in the theater be like, "Who the hell is that? Who's that?" Even I was kind of like, "Really? Like you're going with some of these characters? All right, I'll
yeah,
give you the leash. Let's see if you hang yourself with it."
and I mean, my God, the choreography that they did with like Blink's portal guns, like
Yeah, cool.
that was beautiful. Like that
And
was
Bishop's there too, right? Like
yeah.
Bishop's in the mix.
He's too scrawny for my liking, but
Mm.
like the design that they
No,
did
no
for him was
mullet. I'm
good.
trying to remember.
No, he had dreadlocks.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine, but he was very scrawny. He's like to me, he's like
Yeah,
he should be like jacked up, and he
yeah, for
wasn't.
sure.
But his design was pretty cool, like the way that they did it with the outfit and the hair and all that. I like that.
Yeah,
I'm hoping we see more Bishop live action in the future.
yeah.
I'm
No,
hoping
for
we
sure.
see some freaking
Any
actual
X-Men live action?
yeah, seriously. Like I'm so over Marvel movies. I just get like
But they're
I'm not even excited for
introducing the X-Men
uh,
now.
but they're not.
They
But they're
are.
not because all this is different universes. It's not 616. So
Right.
there's no
It's like
they
the
haven't introduced
Deadpool stuff.
yeah, they haven't introduced any mutants yet in the 616. And
Yeah.
yet. And my worry, my buddy had a theory that it's going to culminate in like this because they already said Secret Wars is coming, and it's pretty much going to be like, hey, the X-Men already exist. They're in a different universe, and they're here in Secret Wars, and then Secret Wars ends and combines the universes. So now X-Men just, mutants just exist. And I'm like, okay, I don't care how they get them to us. I just don't want to wait till 2030 for it. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that's killing me. And they've had so many opportunities to even like sprinkle in a character here or there. Like there was, the rumor mill goes deep. You hear 100 rumors for everything, and there were some good rumors. Like one of them was that Storm was going to be in Wakanda Forever.
Right.
That would have been perfect. Like we don't need an X-Men. Like just introduce them like that. And that
a lot of people thought Rogue would show up in the Marvels.
Why wouldn't you?
Right?
Why?
Why would you make that movie if not to segue into X-Men?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Why not? Like you have Carol Danvers. Give us a Rogue origin story, and she's like the an anti-villain, just like no different than Wakanda Forever when you got Namor. He's
right.
He's the bad guy, but he's not a bad guy.
Right.
They could have done that with Rogue, and it's just like
I'm surprised it's been such a slow rollout, because I thought for sure, because I think it was already looking like that Disney was going to acquire Fox. As the Avengers movies were ending, I thought, oh wow, like that's what's going to carry them throughout, post Avengers. Like maybe we'll have like a year while they're making Fantastic Four and X-Men, and then like they have it's the perfect strategy, because like in my opinion, like Avengers those weren't even like A-list books, like certainly like getting into comics in the 90s, like the Avengers was like it's all about X-Men, like X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. And so Marvel studio, and as evidenced by the fact that those were the properties that Marvel sold to licensed to other studios, right? Because it's like they didn't want Iron Man, they didn't want like Captain America and the Avengers, they wanted X-Men, they wanted Spider-Man, like so
Swamp Thing.
So the fact that Marvel Studios was able to take kind of what they had left, which was Iron Man and some of those other characters, and made them into the most successful movies of all time, like just made them these sensational movies with the Avengers. Like I was like, if they were able to pull that off, like what are they going to do with the properties that like actually have like teeth and have a proven like track record of popularity? And so it's like, Fantastic Four, like that's Marvel's first family. The whole Marvel comic books were like built around that was like the crown jewel of like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, right? Like it was like they're gonna make that movie, and X-Men, like everyone our age growing up with X-Men being the most the biggest thing ever. It's like they're all set. And then granted there's a pandemic, but it just feels like we're now like in year 3, and there's no even like indication of like these movies coming.
Are we in year 3 of owning Fox?
It's been a while.
And I think and now like the like you said, it's like they're talking about like Secret Wars and like a return to Avengers. And it's like, man, that seems like a lot of Avengers movies before doing a Fantastic Four X-Men.
I mean, again, the rumor mill runs deep. One of the things I heard is that when they purchased the Disney and everything like that, purchased all those rights, that all those actors were still under contract, and if they were going to make an X-Men movie, they would be required to cast those actors again. And
wow!
A rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I heard. But it kind of makes sense, because like we did see, in Multiverse of Madness, Professor X, and it was Patrick Stewart, and then we just got Beast in the end of the Marvels, and that was Kelsey Grammer. So
that just makes sense, right?
And we did have Quicksilver in WandaVision.
So maybe that has something to do with it. Or I mean, also it's like best laid plans. Is like stuff's hard. Like I'm sure they want to
Well, they
Yeah,
that was
do
it.
right.
Is what's his face?
Feige.
Yeah,
Kevin
Feige.
Feige. Is that really how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Alright.
Yeah. Oh.
So, Mr. Kevin there.
Mr. F.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mr. F.
Mr.
Big
Mr.
Kev.
Yeah. So he had planned out to a lot out ahead of before the Fox acquisition, and I think Mike is along the lines like Marvel had licensed out so many characters for X amount of years that even when Disney bought Marvel, they were like, we can't use these characters. That's why Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were like weirdly like there's a huge Venn diagram that I've looked at way more than I've ever wanted to. But it's actually really interesting. But like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are X-Men.
Right.
But they also they were only licensed off if you use the X name. So that's why in Age of
Oh,
Ultron, they're not called X-Men and they don't talk about the
right.
X gene.
Yeah, but
So
yeah, they're also not mutants in it. That's like
Do,
they were science experiments
and
in that movie.
right.
do they even call them Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, or is it Wanda and Pietro? Like, because
In Ultron, I know they
I don't
don't.
know.
I don't.
in
Ah,
WandaVision, isn't that like the first time? Because they make a big deal of like, now you are the Scarlet Witch, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like that it kind of implies that they weren't calling her that, like they were just calling her Wanda. I mean, I don't know.
and
I memories
I
vague.
recently watched Ultron again because this past summer we were like, with all the new Marvel movies coming out, we were constantly kind of behind the game. So
Mm,
we have a 10-year-old, and like the Marvel movies started coming out literally before he was born.
yeah.
So like we were like, all right, you haven't seen half these movies in over 4 years, and some of them you haven't seen. So we're just gonna start at the beginning. So we popped Iron Man 1 on, and we stopped at the end of phase 2. So
Mm.
um and
And that's
then
Age of Ultron.
no, it's Ant-Man, but
Oh,
Ultron was like 2 movies before it or something like that.
mhm.
Yeah.
I forget so I don't think they actually call them Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in that for that probably for that reason. If I'm sure it's out there, you find out like they don't call them that in the movie because you can't call them that, but you can use their first and like the names are Marvel characters, but you can't like. I'm sure that's probably part of it. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if
Well, and they showed up in an X-Men movie like the same year, right? Like
it was. I think it
in
was like the year
Quicksilver did,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
well, but then and also Wanda as like his little kid sister.
Right.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's Days of Future Past, right?
And I did like Evan Peters as Quicksilver.
Yeah,
I
he's
was
great.
I was now don't get me wrong, Kick-Ass did a pretty good job in Age of Ultron.
The
You mean
thing, like,
Craven?
Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. It's hard to keep track of who he's playing now.
uh, the thing is, though, I feel like they should be able to do Quicksilver's hair better than they have in the like like he's like his overall design, like Quicksilver, he's supposed to be like sleek and aerodynamic, like slicked back hair.
Yeah, let's give him luscious hair.
Even if white doesn't like read on screen or whatever, like it even has to be silver. But it's like I feel like he always has like kind of like a big wig like, in both iterations, and then also it kind of like oddly bothered me that he had like stubble or like a beard in the Age of
In the
Ultron
Ultron.
movie
Yeah.
because
Oh
it's like,
yeah.
man, dude's got to be like aerodynamic. Like he's got to be like
Too much
swimmers. They
friction.
got to
Too much
shave,
friction.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are those little minute details that actually help sell a movie, right? Like you were like you talked about earlier, like you can, if the animation is amazing, you can kind of forgive the storyline a little bit, and vice versa, right? Like if the
Yeah.
storyline's amazing,
Yeah.
you can kind of forgive the animation a little bit. But that's, and we talked about X-Men 97, right? Like it's X-Men 97 exists entirely for people in our age brackets to
Right.
watch.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like we're gonna make our kids watch it and then they're gonna get into it. That's how this is
Yeah.
gonna work, right? Like,
We're the only people who remember 1997.
Right?
right. Like, that's it. It's like,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
it was what, 10 years ago, right? I think. Yeah.
8.
So, huh?
I said 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's it. Is like sure, we're joking and stuff like that. This is what we want to see, but the reality is we want to see it. Like, and we're not the only people, right? Like, in
No.
the continuity in that, and like, I want to see an X-Men movie. I loved X-Men 2 probably more than I ever thought I would.
Mhm.
I own it on VHS. I couldn't get that VHS fast enough. I own it on DVD. I own it on 17 other copies of it because I'm a glutton for punishment and own way more multiple copies of movies than I ever thought I would. When I started collecting movies back in mid 90s. I even enjoyed X-Men 3. Sure, Wolverine somehow regenerated faster than a blazing inferno. We're gonna move past that stupid minute detail, and we'll focus on all the other minute details about the movie that were kind of obnoxious. But you could definitely tell that they're like, "Ooh, we got a third movie. We got to throw something together." Hey, Cyclops, you want to be in it? Oh, you're too busy filming. What, Sex Drive? Oh, cool. You're gonna die in the first 5 minutes, and then you don't have to be there.
But you know what I love about the original 3 movies is in each movie his visor gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Like the first one takes up like half his face.
Yeah.
And then,
Technology, dude. You come on. We were just talking about that. The technology, it got smaller and smaller. It's like when cell phones went from, this big to those weird little ones that you would see that were like this big and like this skinny that you would see they only sold them at Tweeter for some reason. So they sold like audio equipment and like weird cell phones. And then now we're back to things that are like this big, so I could watch entire TV shows.
all of X-Men 97.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. All of X-Men 97 on it, right?
But the other good thing though about the Deadpool is supposedly they confirmed that Hugh Jackman will be wearing the mask.
Oh, cool.
They didn't say how long, so that's probably going to be like a 30-second thing, which
right,
is gonna upset people, but we'll get it. But I like how so many leaks have come out about this movie that Ryan Reynolds is just like, fuck you guys, and made like his own fake leaks. Like there's one where like a predator on set, like talking like to the director and stuff, and like just all this random shit.
And it's but those are the reasons why I'm like, all right, if they like Hugh Jackman has fully embodied Wolverine at this point, right? Like, and with Wolverine in his weird, and Hugh Jackman also doesn't age like Wolverine, so I guess we're fine, right? He could still pull off Wolverine. I don't know how many of the other X-Men characters could still pull it off. I'm pretty sure Professor X could still be, Patrick Stewart. Ian McKellen could still be Magneto. I think a lot of the characters could probably. He could still.
No, he's too old at this point.
I think all this stuff. It's like it's they need a fresh start, right? Because it's like this is going to be building like the future. But I don't know. I mean, it's that kind of complicates it. It's like it's easier to build off of something that's already going. It's like it's hard to decide like, well, what's the new version gonna be like, and trying to please it. Like Star Wars, I think is like a great example of like, well, we have to make new movies that like please everyone, but that will also like launch all of these like new franchise and everything. So it's tough. It's hard to like.
It is. It's a thin line for sure.
Right? And the other thing too is like thinking about like you can never go back, right? It's like you can only go forward. So like so even like X-Men 97, thinking about like the original X-Men animated series, like the original Batman the animated series. It's like it's such a perfect confluence of people and timing and culture that makes those shows what they are when they are, and you can't replicate that. Like you can only make something like
You could
different
try.
that hopefully works, but like
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, you can learn, you can try to and bring along the lessons of like what made the original so good, right? But it's like, you know the shows are like the people that make them, right? And those
Yeah.
people retire, they move
For
on to
sure.
other things, they run out of ideas. It's like that. It's just it's when it's over, it's over. And as much as we are nostalgic for those things and wish that we could just have more and more and go back, like sometimes it's just not possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better off not.
Yeah, you can't engineer it, right? You can't like
Yeah.
you can't bring back all those same circumstances and have like the same results, because it's just, talking about something like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, like
Yeah.
trying to rekindle
You don't
that.
have
Get that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, right.
you don't have the guys who started Image drawing X-Men right now. I mean, you could probably get them to do it again, but like
Oh man, Jim Lee returning to X-Men. Can you
Jim
Yeah.
imagine?
Lee, Rob
The
Liefeld.
the CEO of DC Comics is
Right?
like-
Can't we all just get along?
right.
Have we learned nothing from Master Mold and the Sentinels, that there's no Marvel in DC, there's just human beings? Nick, I notice you've got an X-Men shirt.
I
You're more of a
do.
comics guy. Are you an X-Men comics guy?
I have been for a long period of time. Like I said, I got into it. Like the TV show made me start paying attention in Walmart in the checkout lines, and they would sell like X-Men, X Factor, Cable, Generation X like combo packs. It was like
Yeah.
two
Oh yeah, I
comics
remember
for like
those.
$2, and that's how I became like I say Executioner's Song because that's literally like the first X-Men comics I got because of the TV show, and then realizing it wasn't like the TV show, I did the same thing. You're like, this isn't my X-Men. I still
Yeah.
did it because I'm a completionist, but yeah. And then I've kind of waned and stuff like that. Joss Whedon came in and wrote Astonishing X-Men,
Right,
and then
right.
even after he dropped
Yeah.
off of that kept going, and that was really good. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I have, and like I said, the movies, I have actively enjoyed the X-Men for just probably at this point like 30 years.
Yeah.
Because the TV show came out in 92, and that would have made me 9. I can't guarantee that I started watching it right at the premiere of the series, right? Like I watched so many cartoons in the 90s. Like,
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if did you guys have this effect, and they talk about this in this awesome, which I highly recommend, the art and making of X-Men the animated series. It's written and
yeah.
compiled by Eric Lewald and Julia Lewald, who were the
creators,
showrunners,
right?
creators. Yeah. So it's all these like amazing behind the scenes anecdotes, but like, they ran into complications with like production order, I think, especially for that first season. So the episodes would like air out of order, so like almost out of the gate. I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but I remember being a kid and feeling like I was like, all right, X-Men's gonna be my thing, I'm gonna get into X-Men, and then be like, wait a minute, what did I miss previously on
Oh,
X-Men?
man.
Like, what the hell's
Oh,
going on? Like,
yeah.
when did these episodes air? And so that got me like thinking, is like, well, so
Shit, I
maybe this is
missed
like for
some.
somebody else, and like, I don't know, like I'm behind, like maybe it's
did it air weirdly? Because you had to actually read TV Guide back then. So did I misread TV Guide as to when the episode was airing?
It was really their way of just gaslighting a bunch of kids.
well, but all the episodes would like kind of lead into, so you would be, and you'd be completely confused, but everyone was, right? And
Right.
apparently for season 2, the way they like worked around that is they had this detail where Xavier and Magneto are stranded in the Savage Land, And so every episode begins with checking in on their progress, trying to survive through the Savage Land. And the reason why they did that is because they could animate all of the Xavier Magneto scenes up front, so that whatever order the episodes were in, they could put the right segment from the
Oh, geez.
Savage Land plot in. So you would
That's
know that
cool.
you were seeing, you would have some through line, and then the episodes themselves would like be more like standalone and focus on, you know, each X-Men's backstory.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, smart move. For
Yeah, it's
sure.
cool.
It is actually a really smart move.
Actually, again, in this, I'll plug this book again because they, at one point, they discuss like the an outline for like the structure of the of an X-Men episode. So like, because you're dealing with a writer's room, multiple writers, like they're all going to go off and they're going to pitch ideas for episodes. They're going to, it's different people writing it, but so to keep that like show consistency, they have this thing. It's like, this is what an X-Men episode is. This is what it has. Like, this is the structure, and it shows like, that these are the beats that you should hit. And it's like, it's a great
Nice.
way of doing it. And you realize like, oh yeah, there's a level, there's like a consistent quality between all the X-Men episodes because they all like adhere to that. And the episodes that really stand out in your mind are the ones that do like, that really are able to take like a kind of a formula and just like make it sing, right?
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that book now, and it looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you like animation, like, but certainly if you like X-Men the animated series, it is a must get, because yeah, it's just like the behind the scenes are great, the history of it's great, it has like all these amazing like character models and storyboards, and it goes through like, oh yeah, I just randomly opened to this page, but this is for you, Mike. Little Senyaka appearance.
The fact that he's like added in like something like as pivotal as that, considering he was like this in the show.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, they went deep with much deeper than I thought from with some of these background characters. Like
That's cool.
This is an obscure one. Do you guys remember Haven from X Factor?
No.
This character. It was like it was just after like the Peter David, Larry Stroman X Factor era in the early 90s. She was like she could like heal people, I think. Like, anyway.
Okay.
Very obscure comic X-Men character. They did a character. She's in the show somewhere in the background.
Huh.
I enjoy the thorough things like that. Like,
yeah,
I own physical media, and I won't stop buying it, no matter whatever streaming platform something comes out on. Entirely because A, you can't take that from me.
Yeah.
And B, I mean, my partner can. She can definitely tell me. But that's different. Like, I can't have HBO Max tell me I can't watch this on DVD anymore. You could suck. Right. But the bonus features and the behind the scenes stuff has always intrigued me. And
yeah, same here.
Like, I've watched movies, and like as soon as the movie's over, it's like I'm into watching all the special features, the behind the scenes thing, like so even though the movie ended at like 9:00 at night, it's like 11:00, and I'm finally like, all right, I think I've watched all the behind the scenes deleted scenes, and
on the first disc, time for the second
disc. Yeah. I'll watch the second disc on a later date, but yeah, like and those are the intriguing things. Like, a lot of them, like animated movies, I like the weird behind the scenes one where you could tell it's like 4 pictures out of 10 in a frame. So like the characters are like definitely hand drawn, and they're like on a white piece of paper with color, and they're definitely like, oh yeah, I'm definitely doing, and like I love watching the partially animated scenes, and I don't know why.
Oh no, I
Uh,
mean, yeah, the special features on animated movies in particular are just, I mean, I remember I watched like all the Pixar, like, the behind the scenes
Yeah, that
on,
stuff's so
you
cool.
know, Incredibles, and just over and
oh yeah,
over, like looking at every little, nugget of of making of.
Yeah, the
no,
animated storyboards, the character designs, all that stuff. It's
oh
so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've watched all the special features on the Aladdin movie.
Have you guys seen I'm blanking on what the title of the documentary is, but it was a documentary about making the Emperor's New Groove. Um,
I've heard about it. I haven't
I don't
seen
know
it.
if it was officially released. It was like it's been on YouTube a few times. I don't know if like Disney keeps pulling it, but like it is
Probably.
so interesting. Like if you really want to see like how the sausage is made, the not the pretty promotional behind the scenes that they put on the Blu-ray, but like how it's actually made. Uh, that documentary is nuts.
The sweat
Nice.
box,
What's it?
the sweat
Yeah,
box.
that's the one.
Definitely not seen that.
Oh, you gotta watch it. Oh, it's so good.
Uh,
Because it was, yeah, that was such a crazy production. The story changed so much. Like over the course, like Sting was attached to all the music, and it like keeps checking in every now and then with like where Sting is, and Sting's like all over the world while they're trying to figure out like what the movie's even about. And he's, it's so it's great, and I feel like it's probably more the norm with, or we probably don't realize like how many animated movies or just movies in general are more similar to this process than not.
Jesus.
But yeah, it's cool.
That's insane.
I'm definitely gonna go find a copy
Oh
of
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, definitely gonna watch
Turns out,
that.
according to Wikipedia, Disney owns the rights to it, and shocker, they're not releasing it.
Yeah.
They have, I mean, they've released a whole number of like behind the scenes documentaries, like Waking Sleeping Beauty and like the Frank and Ollie, and it goes back to like a whole. It's like documentaries about a lot of the old school stuff, and like I don't know. I've always been into that stuff, so that book that you have, that's gonna be on my birthday list.
Yeah, it's super awesome. And yeah, it was, the X-Men, they detail, they were working with a budget, and
Yeah.
they and I think they even referenced like, Batman the animated series had like all of Warner Animation behind it. Like it had like amazing resources, and they were, doing, the best with what they had. And the show was like, one of the highest rated shows
Yeah.
on TV, and
For
like
good
it was just,
reason too.
yeah, it was a huge success, and was selling all his toys and stuff. And yeah, because they just killed it. They did such a great job.